Admiral Lucas Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the radar screens with growing concern. The massive warship floated at the edge of Earth's solar system, serving as humanity's first line of defense. Kane had been waiting for this day for 20 years, but now that it was here, his stomach felt tight with worry. "Sir, we're getting massive energy readings from Sector 7, called out Lieutenant Ben Ross from his station. The young officer's voice carried a tremor that he was trying hard to hide. "Whatever's coming through, it's big." Kane walked over to the main display screen. The readings showed energy signatures unlike anything they had seen before. These weren't the small scout ships that occasionally wandered into human space. This was something much larger and far more dangerous. "How big are we talking about, Lieutenant?" Kane asked, keeping his voice steady for the crew's sake. Ross checked his instruments again, hoping he had made a mistake. "Sir, I'm reading at least 3,000 individual ships. Maybe more. They're still coming through the jump point." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. 3,000 ships was more than the entire human fleet combined. Kane had commanded ships for 30 years, fought pirates and rebels, but he had never faced anything like this. Captain Amy Scott's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth's Deep Space Intelligence headquarters. "Defiance, this is Control. We're tracking the same readings. Can you confirm ship count?" "Control, we confirm at least 3,000 vessels and still counting," Kane replied. "Request immediate contact with Earth Defense Council." "Already done, Admiral. President Martinez is being briefed now. Stand by for further orders." Kane turned to his tactical officer, Commander Rick Hayes. "What do our computers tell us about those ships?" Hayes worked quickly at his station, running the energy signatures through the military database. After a few minutes, his face went pale. "Sir, the computer matches these signatures to Draconian Empire vessels, heavy cruisers, battle carriers, and dreadnoughts. The Draconian Empire was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most aggressive species in space. They conquered worlds not for resources or territory, but simply because they could. Dozens of civilizations had fallen to their fleets over the past century. Most species surrendered rather than face complete destruction." "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. "It's coming from the lead Draconian ship." "Put it on screen," Kane ordered. The main display flickered and showed the scaled face of a Draconian commander. The alien's yellow eyes glowed with confidence, and its sharp teeth were visible as it spoke in heavily accented English. "I am Fleet. Commander Zaraketh of the Draconian Empire," the alien announced. "Your species has been selected for conquest. You will surrender all military vessels immediately and prepare your worlds for occupation. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Kane had expected this day might come, but the reality of it was different from the war games and planning sessions. "Admiral, incoming priority message from Earth," Park said. "It's President Martinez." The screen changed to show the familiar face of Earth's leader. John Martinez looked calm despite the circumstances, which Kane found reassuring. "Admiral Kane, I'm sure you've seen our uninvited guests," Martinez said. "How long do we have before they reach Earth?" Kane looked at his navigation officer, who quickly ran the calculations. "Based on their current speed, approximately 6 hours, Mr. President." "Good. That gives us time to implement Protocol 7. Are your crews ready?" Kane felt a surge of relief. Protocol 7 was Earth's most classified defense plan, known only to the highest levels of military command. Kane had helped develop it years ago, but he had hoped they would never need to use it. "Yes, sir. All crews have been drilled on Protocol 7 procedures. We're ready." "Excellent. Begin Phase 1 immediately. Remember, Admiral, everything depends on making this look real." The transmission ended, and Kane turned to address his crew. Most of them looked scared, which was exactly what they needed for the plan to work. "All hands, this is the Admiral," Kane announced over the ship's communication system. "We are facing the largest invasion fleet in human history. Our orders are to engage the enemy and buy time for Earth's defenses. Every minute we hold them here could save millions of lives." It wasn't entirely a lie. They were buying time, just not in the way his crew thought. On Earth, Dr. Peter Walsh was studying the Draconian fleet composition from his laboratory. The tall, thin scientist had spent his career studying alien species, but he had never seen so many Draconian ships in one place. They're following standard Draconian invasion doctrine, he reported to the military officials gathered in the secure briefing room. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, support vessels in the rear. It's the same formation they used to conquer the Centauri colonies. Colonel Lisa Brooks nodded as she reviewed the tactical displays. That's what we were, counting on. The Draconians never change their methods because they've never needed to. Their overwhelming force has always been enough, until now, added General Paul Anderson from his position at the head of the table. The old soldier had been planning for this moment for decades. Gentlemen, ladies, today we find out if 50 years of preparation was worth it. Outside Earth's atmosphere, hidden defense stations began powering up systems that had remained dormant for years. The crews manning these stations had trained for this moment, but they had never been told exactly what their equipment was designed to do. Back on the Defiance, Kane watched as more Draconian ships continued to emerge from the jump point. The alien fleet was larger than any military force in recorded history. To any observer, Earth appeared doomed. "Sir, the enemy fleet is moving into attack formation," reported Commander Hayes. "They'll be within weapons range in 4 hours." Kane nodded and activated his personal communication device. "All stations, this is Kane. Protocol 7 is now active. Begin Phase 1 on my mark." He looked around the bridge at his crew one more time. Most of them believed they were about to die fighting for their homeworld. In a way that made their fear and determination completely genuine. "Mark," Kane said quietly. The greatest deception in human history had begun. Captain Ryan Foster gripped the arms of his command chair as the USS Liberty shook under enemy fire. Around him, sparks flew from damaged control panels, while his crew worked desperately to keep the ship running. Through the main screen, he could see the massive Draconian fleet bearing down on Earth's defenders. "Hull breach on Deck 7, shouted Engineer Tony Mills over the noise of alarms. "We're losing atmosphere fast." Foster nodded grimly. "Seal the breach and reroute power to engines. We need to fall back with the rest of the fleet." What his crew didn't know was that the Liberty wasn't really damaged. The sparks came from pre-installed pyrotechnic devices. The hull breach was a carefully controlled decompression, and the ship's real systems were functioning perfectly. Foster was one of only 12 captains who knew the truth about Protocol 7. "Sir, the Draconians are pursuing our retreat," reported Lieutenant Carroll, white from the tactical station. "They're taking the bait." Foster allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Signal the rest of our squadron to continue falling back. Make it look desperate." 3 hours earlier, the first phase of the battle had begun exactly as planned. Earth's fleet had engaged the Draconian forces in what appeared to be a brave but hopeless defense. Human ships fought hard but were slowly being pushed back toward Earth, just as the enemy expected. From her hidden command bunker on Luna, Commander Kate Sullivan watched the battle unfold on dozens of screens. The underground facility had been built 50 years ago, disguised as a mining operation. Even most of Earth's military didn't know it existed. "Phoenix Squadron is reporting successful retreat," called out Major Dan Cooper from his monitoring station. "The Draconians are following standard pursuit patterns." Sullivan nodded as she studied the tactical display. Every human ship that appeared to be destroyed was actually deploying advanced holographic projectors. These devices created convincing explosions and debris fields while the real ships escaped through pre-planned routes. "What's the status on our intelligence gathering?" Sullivan asked. "Excellent, Commander. Every fake battle is giving us detailed scans of Draconian ship systems. We're learning their shield frequencies, weapon patterns, and communication protocols in real time." Dr. Helen Murphy sat in her laboratory deep beneath the Swiss Alps, analyzing the data as it came in. The brilliant scientist had spent 20 years studying alien technology, preparing for this exact moment. Her computers were processing terabytes of information about the Draconian fleet. "Fascinating," she murmured to her assistant, Dr. Kevin. "Their ships are even more predictable than we hoped. They're using standard formation Delta 7 exactly like they did against the Rigel colonies. Ross looked up from his own screens. Does that mean our countermeasures will work? Better than we hoped. The Draconians have never faced serious resistance before. They don't adapt their tactics because they've never needed to. Their overconfidence is their weakness. Back in space, the retreat continued. Captain Jennifer Lopez watched her ship's sensors as more Draconian vessels moved into position around Earth. Her destroyer, the Valiant, appeared to be limping away from the battle with engine damage and hull breaches. "Ma'am, we're getting a priority signal from Luna Command," reported her communications officer. "Put it through," Lopez ordered. Commander Sullivan's voice came through clearly on the secure channel. "All ships, continue Phase 2 as planned. The enemy is positioning exactly where we need them." Lopez acknowledged and turned to her crew. "You heard the orders. Keep up the damage illusion and prepare for emergency jump to Rally Point 7. What made the deception so convincing was that most of the human crews genuinely believed they were losing. Only the ship captains and a few senior officers knew the truth. The fear and desperation of the regular crew members made their performances completely authentic. Engineer Gary Thompson worked frantically in the hidden facility beneath Mount McKinley in Alaska. The massive underground complex housed Earth's most advanced technology, including the weapon systems that would soon decide humanity's fate. "Primary array is at 90% power," he reported to his supervisor, Colonel Mike Turner. "All satellite networks are synchronized and ready." Turner checked the status displays. "How long until we can achieve full activation?" "Another 6 hours, sir. The Draconian fleet needs to be in exact position, or the system won't work properly." The bow weapon wasn't a traditional one. Instead of energy beams or missiles, it relied on precise manipulation of quantum fields. Thompson had helped design it based on captured alien technology and decades of theoretical research. On the surface, the battle continued. Admiral Kane's flagship Defiance appeared to be fighting a running battle against superior numbers. His crew worked with desperate efficiency, believing they were humanity's last hope. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Arizona and the Mumbai," reported Lieutenant Ben Ross. "The Draconians are breaking through our defensive line." Kane nodded sadly, playing his part perfectly. "Signal all remaining ships to fall back to Earth orbit. We'll make our final stand there." What Ross didn't see was the small smile that crossed Kane's face. The Arizona and Mumbai had successfully deployed their holographic decoys and were now safely hidden behind Jupiter's moons, along with dozens of other ships that appeared to have been destroyed. Fleet Commander Zara Keth stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought, watching the human fleet retreat in disorder. The scaly alien felt a familiar satisfaction as another species fell before Draconian might. "Pathetic," he hissed to his second-in-command. "These humans fight like children. Their ships are primitive and their tactics are weak." "Shall we press our attack, Commander?" asked the subordinate. "Yes. Move the fleet into orbital bombardment formation around their home world. We will give them one final chance to surrender before we begin destroying their cities." What Zaraketh didn't realize was that his fleet was moving into exactly the position Earth's defenders had been guiding them toward for hours. Every retreat, every apparent mistake, every desperate maneuver had been carefully calculated to place the Draconian ships precisely where humanity needed them. Dr. Rachel Ford monitored the enemy fleet's movements from her station in the Antarctic Research Facility. The massive ice-covered complex looked like a climate research station, but it actually housed some of Earth's most advanced sensor arrays. "Perfect positioning," she reported to the Global Command Network. "The Draconian fleet is clustering in optimal formation for Phase 3. Commander Sullivan received Ford's report with relief. "Confirmed. All stations prepare for Phase 3 activation. The trap is nearly set." As the fake battle continued above Earth, hidden systems throughout the solar system began their final preparations. Automated stations that had appeared to be simple research outposts or communications relays started powering up equipment that had waited decades for this moment. The Draconians, confident in their inevitable victory, moved their ships into the exact positions Earth's defenders had planned. Soon, Fleet Commander Zaraketh would learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology. It was patience, planning, and the ability to make their enemies defeat themselves. The deception phase was nearly complete, and the real battle was about to begin. Fleet Commander Zaraketh gazed at the blue planet below with satisfaction. Earth hung before him like a ripe fruit, ready to be picked. His 3,000 warships surrounded the human homeworld in perfect formation, their weapons trained on the surface cities. "Signal the human leaders," Zaraketh ordered his communications officer. "Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender completely, or we begin orbital bombardment." The Draconian commander felt the familiar pleasure of inevitable victory. In his 50 years of conquest, no species had ever successfully resisted the Empire. The humans would be no different, despite their brave but foolish attempts at defense. On Earth's surface, President Martinez received the ultimatum in his underground bunker beneath Washington. The secure facility buzzed with activity as military officials coordinated the final phase of their plan. "Sir, the Draconian fleet is in perfect position," reported General Anderson, studying the tactical displays. "All ships are clustered exactly where we need them." Martinez nodded calmly. "And our hidden assets?" "Ready and waiting for your order, Mr. President." Commander Steve Clark stood in the control center of Station Olympus, a facility that officially didn't exist. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the outer solar system, Olympus had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for 30 years. "Sir, we're receiving the activation codes from Earth," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Baker. "All systems are green and ready for deployment." Clark had trained for this moment his entire career, but he still felt the weight of responsibility. "Confirm all targeting solutions are locked in?" "Confirmed, sir. Every Draconian ship is tracked and tagged. The moment they move into final bombardment position, we can activate." Dr. Rachel Ford worked frantically in her laboratory, monitoring the quantum field generators hidden throughout the solar system. The devices appeared to be simple communication relays or navigation beacons, but they were actually components of the most sophisticated weapon ever built. "Field alignment is perfect," she reported to the global command network. "The Draconians have positioned themselves in the exact center of our targeting grid." Her assistant, Dr. Mark Williams, checked the power readings. "All generators are at full charge. We can maintain the field for up to 6 hours once activated." Above Earth, the negotiation charade began. Admiral Kane's heavily damaged flagship limped toward the Draconian command vessel under a flag of truce. Kane himself sat in a small shuttle, apparently coming to discuss surrender terms. "Remember, Admiral," came Commander Sullivan's voice through his hidden earpiece, "you need to keep them talking for at least 30 minutes. We need that time for final system alignment." Kane acknowledged silently and prepared to meet with the alien commander. His shuttle approached the massive Draconian dreadnought, its hull scarred from the earlier battle. What the aliens didn't know was that those scars were carefully applied paint, not real damage. Fleet Commander Zaraketh received the human admiral in his ship's main conference room. The alien's yellow eyes gleamed with triumph as Kane entered, flanked by Draconian guards. "So the humans finally accept reality," Zaraketh hissed in his heavily accented English. "Your fleet is destroyed, your defenses are broken. What terms? Do you think you can negotiate?" Kane kept his expression defeated and desperate. "Commander, we know we cannot win through force, but surely there must be some way to avoid the complete destruction of our species." "Your people will make excellent servants," the Draconian replied coldly. "Those who submit will be allowed to live under our rule. Those who resist will be eliminated." Lieutenant Colonel Jake Barnes monitored the conversation from his station in the Cheyenne Mountain complex. Around him, dozens of technicians worked at consoles that controlled systems scattered across the solar system. "Sir, all sleeper protocols are active," reported Sergeant Lisa Murphy. "Every automated station is responding to our signals." Barnes nodded, watching the countdown timer on his screen. "Good. Begin final power routing to the primary arrays." What made humanity's defense system so unique was its distributed nature. Rather than building massive weapon platforms that could be detected and destroyed, Earth scientists had hidden small components throughout the solar system over several decades. Dr. Peter Walsh studied the Draconian ship formations from his research center. Their clustering is even tighter than our best-case scenarios, he reported. The quantum cascade effect should propagate through their entire fleet within minutes. His colleague, Dr. Ann Foster, monitored the alien communication channels. They're completely unaware of our true capabilities. Their confidence is making them careless. The Draconians had made a critical mistake that would prove fatal. By surrounding Earth in their standard conquest formation, they had created the exact conditions needed for humanity's weapon to work. The aliens' own tactical doctrine had become the key to their defeat. On the hidden moon base, Captain Jennifer Lopez watched as her crew prepared the final components of the trap. The facility looked like a standard mining operation, but beneath the surface lay some of Earth's most advanced technology. "Ma'am, we're receiving final authorization codes," reported her communications officer. "Acknowledged. All stations report ready for Phase 3 activation." Back on the Draconian flagship, Kane continued his performance as a defeated commander. "Perhaps we could discuss the terms of occupation," he said slowly, buying precious time. "What would be required of our population?" Zaraketh enjoyed watching the human squirm. "Your species will provide labor for our expanding empire. Your worlds will supply resources. Your children will be educated in proper submission to Draconian authority." Kane fought to keep his expression neutral while rage burned inside him. "I see. And if we refuse these terms? Then your cities burn, your people die, and we take what we want from the ashes," the alien commander replied matter-of-factly. In the depths of the Antarctic facility, Dr. Rachel Ford made her final calculations. "All quantum field generators are synchronized," she announced. "The resonance cascade is ready for deployment." Engineer Gary Thompson ran through his final checklist at the McKinley facility. "Primary power couplings are stable. All safety protocols are disabled. We are go for activation." President Martinez received confirmation from all stations around the globe. The moment had finally arrived to test 50 years of secret preparation against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Admiral Kane, this is Martinez," the president said through the secure communication link. "You have 30 seconds to clear the target zone." Kane nodded slightly to acknowledge the message. "Commander Zaraketh, I believe I have heard enough of your terms. I will need to return to Earth to discuss this with our government." The Draconian leader waved dismissively. "You have 1 hour to provide our answer. After that, we begin bombardment." Kane's shuttle departed the alien flagship and raced toward a safe distance. Behind him, 3,000 Draconian warships hung in space, completely unaware that they had positioned themselves in the center of the most sophisticated trap in human history. "All stations, this is President Martinez," came the final command. "Execute Protocol 7, Phase 3. Activate the quantum disruption field." Deep beneath the Earth's surface and in hidden facilities throughout the solar system, technicians pressed buttons and activated systems that had waited decades for this moment. The trap was sprung. General Paul Anderson sat in the secure briefing room beneath the Pentagon, his weathered hands clasped as he watched the final preparations unfold. At 72 years old, he had spent most of his life preparing for this single moment. The weight of 50 years of secrets pressed down on him as he prepared to witness the culmination of humanity's greatest gamble. "Sir, all stations report ready," announced Colonel Turner from his position at the central console. "Quantum field generators are at maximum power." Anderson nodded slowly. "Then it's time to tell the story that no one was supposed to hear." 50 years ago, a young Lieutenant Anderson had been part of a routine patrol mission in the outer reaches of human space. His ship, the USS Explorer, had been investigating strange energy readings near the edge of the solar system when they encountered something that changed everything. "We found them drifting in deep space," Anderson said quietly to the assembled officers. 7 Draconian ships completely dead. No power, no life support, no communications. At first we thought they had been attacked by some unknown enemy. Dr. Maria Santos, now in her 80s, sat at the conference table listening to Anderson's account. She had been the young physicist who first studied the derelict alien vessels, and her discoveries had led to the development of Project Mirror. The ships weren't damaged, Santos added, her voice still sharp despite her age. There were no weapon marks, no hull breaches, no signs of battle. The crews inside were alive but unconscious, their technology completely shut down. Captain Amy Scott leaned forward with interest. As head of Earth's Deep Space Intelligence, she had access to most classified information, but the details of Project Mirror had been restricted to only a handful of people. What caused the shutdown? Scott asked. Santos smiled grimly. That's what took us 20 years to figure out. The Draconians and every other spacefaring species we knew about relied heavily on quantum field manipulation for their advanced technology. Their ships, weapons, life support systems, even their communications all depended on artificially generated quantum fields. Anderson continued the story. We discovered that a natural quantum storm in that region of space had disrupted the alien technology. The storm created cascading failures that shut down every system on their ship simultaneously. Dr. Peter Walsh, who had been studying the current Draconian fleet, suddenly understood. You figured out how to create artificial quantum storms. Exactly, Santos confirmed. We spent the next 30 years developing the technology to generate controlled quantum disruptions. The key was learning to create a cascade effect that would propagate through multiple ships at once. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity had possessed a weapon capable of disabling entire fleets for decades, but they had kept it completely secret. Why didn't we use it before? Asked Commander Sullivan through the communication link from Luna. We could have prevented the Centauri massacre, saved the Rigel colonies. Anderson's expression darkened. Because using it too early would have revealed our capabilities to every hostile species in the galaxy. We needed to wait for the right moment, when we could eliminate a major threat while maintaining our cover. The Draconian Empire was that threat. As the most aggressive and powerful military force in known space, they represented the greatest danger to human survival. More importantly, they were so confident in their superiority that they would never suspect a primitive species like humanity of possessing advanced weapons. Dr. Helen Murphy accessed the classified files that were now being unsealed. According to these records, we've been using this weapon selectively for decades. Scout fleets, exploration vessels, small military units that got too close to human space, all made to look like accidents, Anderson confirmed. Ships found drifting with mysterious system failures. Crews rescued and relocated to remote colonies with no memory of what happened. The galaxy learned to avoid certain regions of space, thinking they were dangerous due to natural phenomena. Engineer Gary Thompson monitored the power levels of the quantum field generators from his station. Sir, we're approaching optimal field strength. The Draconian fleet is in perfect position. Santos studied the tactical display showing the enemy ships surrounding Earth. Their formation is actually helping us. By clustering their vessels so tightly, they've created the ideal conditions for a cascading quantum disruption. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The Draconian standard conquest formation, perfected through hundreds of successful invasions, had become the key to their defeat. Colonel Lisa Brooks received updates from monitoring stations around the globe. All hidden facilities report ready. The quantum network is fully synchronized. What made Project Mirror so effective was its distributed nature. Instead of building obvious weapon platforms, humanity had hidden small quantum field generators throughout the solar system over several decades. Communications satellites, research stations, mining operations, and navigation beacons all contained hidden components of the larger weapon system. Dr. Rachel Ford's voice came through the communication network from Antarctica. Field resonance is achieving perfect harmony. We can maintain the disruption effect for up to 6 hours once activated. President Martinez entered the briefing room, flanked by his security detail. Gentlemen, ladies, are we ready to make history? Anderson stood and saluted. Yes, sir. Project Mirror is ready for full activation. And Admiral Kane? Safe and clear of the target zone, Mr. President. Martinez looked around the room at the faces of the people who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Scientists, engineers, military officers, and intelligence analysts who had worked in absolute secrecy for decades. Before we proceed, I want everyone to understand what we're about to do, Martinez said solemnly. We're not just defending Earth. We're sending a message to every aggressive species in the galaxy that humanity is not as weak as we appear. Dr. Santos nodded. The beauty of this weapon is that no one will know we have it. The Draconian fleet will simply vanish, just like their scouts did 50 years ago. Other species will assume they encountered the same mysterious phenomenon that has been claiming ships in human space for decades. Commander Steve Clark's voice crackled through from Station Olympus. Sir, the Draconian commander is hailing Earth. He's demanding our final answer. Martinez smiled coldly. Tell him he's about to get it. Anderson looked at the chronometer on the wall. 50 years of preparation, Mr. President. 50 years of waiting for the right moment. And now that moment is here, Martinez replied. Activate Project Mirror. Let's show the galaxy what happens when they underestimate humanity. The order went out to every hidden facility, every concealed generator, every secret installation that had been built and maintained in absolute secrecy for half a century. Imbro, space above Earth, Fleet Commander Zaraketh was about to learn that his species had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that a young species like humanity couldn't possibly pose a threat to the mighty Draconian Empire. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. Commander Tyler Green sat in the primary control center deep beneath Mount McKinley, his finger hovering over the activation switch. The massive underground facility hummed with power as quantum field generators across the solar system reached maximum charge. Final authorization received from President Martinez, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her station. All stations report ready for activation. Green took a deep breath and pressed the switch. Project Mirror is now active. May God help us, all. The effect wasn't visible to the naked eye. No bright beams of energy shot through space. No explosions lit up the darkness. Instead, invisible quantum fields began propagating outward from hundreds of hidden generators scattered throughout the solar system. Fleet Commander Zaraketh stood on the bridge of his flagship, waiting for the human response to his ultimatum. Around him, his bridge crew monitored their instruments with professional efficiency. 3,000 Draconian warships hung in perfect formation around Earth, ready to begin orbital bombardment. Sir, we're detecting some unusual energy readings, reported his sensor officer, a young Draconian named Keth Tar. Zaraketh barely glanced at the displays. Probably their primitive attempts at jamming our sensors. Ignore it. What the Draconian commander didn't realize was that the unusual readings were quantum disruption fields, specifically designed to target the technology his species relied upon. The invisible energy waves were already washing over his fleet, beginning their deadly work. Captain Nicole Bell monitored the operation from Earth's primary command center, watching as telemetry from the hidden generators showed successful field activation. The quantum disruption was spreading through the Draconian fleet exactly as the computer models had predicted. Sir, we're seeing the first effects, reported Major Dan Cooper from his monitoring station. Draconian ships in the outer formation are beginning to show system irregularities. On the bridge of a Draconian cruiser, sensor operator Velkath noticed his instruments starting to flicker. Captain, our navigation systems are experiencing intermittent failures. Captain Morseth, a veteran of 20 conquest campaigns, frowned at the readings. Run a full diagnostic. We cannot afford equipment failures during an invasion. But it wasn't equipment failure. The quantum fields were beginning to disrupt the fundamental processes that powered Draconian technology. Unlike human systems, which used more primitive but more stable technologies, alien ships depended on artificially maintained quantum states that were extremely vulnerable to disruption. Dr. Chris Parker watched the process unfold from his laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps. His instruments tracked the cascade effect as it spread from ship to ship through the tightly packed Draconian formation. Beautiful, he murmured to his assistant, Dr. Kevin Ross. The quantum disruption is propagating, exactly as we calculated. Their own formation is working against them. Ross monitored the power levels of the field generators. How long before complete fleet shutdown? Based on current propagation rates, approximately 12 minutes for total system failure across all 3,000 ships. In space, the effects were becoming more obvious. Draconian vessels began experiencing cascade failures as their quantum-based systems shut down one by one. First, the navigation systems failed, then communications, then weapons and shields. "Captain, we're losing all power systems," shouted Engineer Tarvek on one of the heavy cruisers. "Life support is failing across all decks." Similar reports flooded in across the Draconian fleet as ship after ship lost power. The aliens' confident formation began to dissolve as vessels drifted helplessly, their crews struggling to understand what was happening. Fleet Commander Zaraketh felt his own ship shudder as the quantum fields reached his flagship. Warning lights flashed across his bridge as systems began failing in sequence. "Emergency power to all critical systems," he ordered, but his engineering officer could only shake his head helplessly. "Sir, even our backup systems are shutting down. Whatever is affecting us is targeting our core technology." Admiral Kane watched the enemy fleet from his command ship, now safely positioned beyond the quantum field's range. Through his tactical display, he could see Draconian vessels going dark one by one as their power systems failed completely. "Sir, the enemy fleet is completely disabled," reported Commander Hayes with amazement in his voice. "All 3,000 ships are showing zero energy signatures." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "Signal all human vessels to begin recovery operations. We have a cleanup job to do." Captain Jennifer Lopez led the first wave of human ships into the disabled Draconian formation. Her crew worked quickly but carefully, using specialized equipment, to board the powerless alien vessels. "Ma'am, the Draconian crews are alive but unconscious," reported her boarding party leader. "Their life support failed, but we got to them in time." "Good. Transfer them to the holding ships and prepare their vessels for transport." The cleanup operation had been planned as carefully as the attack itself. Every Draconian ship would be collected and moved to a remote system where the aliens could establish a primitive colony. The crews would be given basic supplies and left to rebuild their civilization without advanced technology. Dr. Rachel Ford monitored the quantum field strength from her Antarctic facility. "Field generators are holding steady. We can maintain the disruption for another 5 hours if needed, but it wouldn't be necessary." The Draconian fleet was completely helpless, drifting in space like ancient sailing ships becalmed at sea. Their mighty warships had become nothing more than metal shells, their crews dependent on human rescue efforts for survival. President Martinez addressed the global command network from his secure bunker. "Ladies and gentlemen, Operation Mirror is a complete success. The Draconian threat has been neutralized." Cheers erupted in command centers around the world, but Martinez quickly called for silence. "Remember, this victory means nothing if word gets out. As far as the galaxy knows, the Draconian fleet simply vanished near Earth just like their scouts did 50 years ago." Commander Sullivan coordinated the cover-up from her Luna facility. "All human ships are to maintain communication silence about this operation. Official records will show that we detected the Draconian fleet approaching, but lost all contact when they entered the inner system." The story that would spread throughout the galaxy was simple but effective. The mighty Draconian Empire had sent its largest invasion fleet to conquer Earth, but the ships had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Other species would assume they had encountered the same dangerous phenomenon that had been claiming vessels in human space for decades. 3 days later, Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching as the last disabled Draconian vessel was towed away. The alien crews had been relocated to a distant world where they could start over without their advanced technology. "Sir, all enemy vessels have been secured," reported Captain Scott. "The cleanup operation is complete." Kane nodded with satisfaction. "And our official report? The Draconian fleet was detected approaching Earth but vanished when they reached the inner system. No trace was found despite extensive search efforts." It was the same report that had been filed dozens of times over the past 50 years. The galaxy had learned to fear the region around Earth, believing it was cursed by some unknown force that destroyed ships without warning. Dr. Maria Santos, now retired but present for the historic moment, watched the final ships disappear into hyperspace. 50 years of preparation, she said quietly to General Anderson. Was it worth it? Anderson looked at Earth hanging peacefully in space, its cities safe from destruction. Ask me that question again in another 50 years, when the next would-be conqueror arrives at our doorstep. The old general was right. Humanity's secret weapon wasn't just the quantum disruption technology. It was their patience, their planning, and their willingness to appear weak while building strength in the shadows. As word spread throughout the galaxy about the mysterious disappearance of the Draconian fleet, other aggressive species would think twice before threatening Earth. The humans seemed to be protected by some terrible force that destroyed anyone who came too close, and humanity was perfectly content to let them think that. The greatest victory was the one that looked like a mystery to everyone else.